All right. So nice to be with you this morning. I hope you're doing well. I hope your 2025 is off to a great start. And I hope the weekend has been well for you. I'm Dr. Zimmermann. If you're new here, if we haven't met, really nice to meet you. This is Fasting Space. This is a space where we can be chatting about health and wellness and fasting as it relates to each of these. And then we can practice some fasting together for a little bit this morning while we're hanging out. So I'm going to grab a coffee and encourage you, grab a coffee, tea, or just water, whatever you like to drink in the morning. If you're fasting, I always tell people try to make it a calorie-free beverage, and then that makes the process a whole lot easier. Stay hydrated. Most people find, if you can have a pleasant beverage of choice in the morning, makes it a lot easier to get through that space. Got Aquarius with us this morning. Hello, so nice to have you here. Woke up with a fasting glucose of 100, which is kind of a win for me. Hey, that's pretty much a win for anybody. I think hopefully you saw in my big comments I left for you on your one comment there. And then, I cut the stream off right as I was hitting the button. I saw your question come in last week, so I hope you saw my comment there. Yeah, the body in the normal physiology really wants to keep the blood sugar between 90 and 100. And so having it 100, especially if you've been struggling to get it down there, is a huge win, getting it toward normal. And then certain physiology in the body with longer term fasting, if that's something you're diving into, as the body switches over from running mostly off of glucose over to ketones, you can see the blood sugar go much lower than it normally does. And, especially medical providers I've run into who are not familiar with fasting physiology will see, someone's blood sugar, it's 70 or even 60. It's getting so much lower, but someone is fine. And sometimes I've had people with like home ketone monitors and either strips or the blood test, and they say, oh no, we got tons of ketones. They're feeling fine. It's not an alarm. In the short term, you don't want your blood sugar going that low. So happy to hear that you're having good results. Did you dive in with a longer fasting process? I'd be happy to hear what you have going on with that. Today, I want to focus our discussion, at least for a while, on taking action. So I titled this Taking Action. I was listening through music for the stream, and I was getting some real peppy, stuff. And then I thought, I don't know, I think I'm going to keep it a little more on the chill side, because it's like, maybe your taking action is just to relax, I think a lot about fasting as a mental health practice, about trying to get our mindset dialed in the right space. And I kept thinking of that phrase, like, hurry up and wait, like you're trying to get somewhere. Sometimes that can be what fasting can be like we're trying to psych ourselves up for it, but then what it actually is, like, we're just passing some space, passing some time without food. And that doesn't have to be stressful in any way. Usually what I say is I want it to be anti-stressful. So taking action, we're going to focus on moving toward it, but only if the time and the space is right. I posted a video this week. Did you see it? A conversation I had with Gillian Fink. Really thoughtful conversation, I thought. And we came to a couple real interesting places in it. One of which is that, Gillian shared her experience that, after we talked and she learned, I'm about this fasting process. I was telling her about my research, and she thought it was, so exciting. But it wasn't for like 2 years till she psyched herself up to actually try it. And then I shared a story in there that about a patient, one of the first patients that I offered to supervise for a fasting process. They weren't interested, and so, I never push it on anybody. I saw this patient for years, and, sometimes I would, bring it up, and sometimes I wouldn't. And then it wasn't until like 8 years later that they finally, decided to dive in toward it. And so that's the whole mindset that I want. Maybe there are people watching that come in, they say, oh, I'm interested in hearing about a fasting, but I don't want to do it. It's totally fine. I've worked with people for years where I was just say, it's kind of like walking along the river, like you don't have to dive right in. Nobody should feel any pressure. So as we're talking about taking action, don't want anyone to feel like they have to do anything, of course, ever, that they don't feel comfortable with. Taking action might just be thinking about it, might just be letting everything sink in, I was listening to a show last week. The gentleman was talking about how bamboo grows. Like bamboo, people see it and it shoots up. It grows so fast, but people don't realize it grows for 5 years underground, and it's like building out the roots. And then the 6th year, it shoots up and grows. And if you just saw it, you say, well, it grows so fast. Okay, you don't see all the hard work, that it's putting in for years without noticing it. So we can be in a space where maybe we're not always getting the exact results we want. We're not seeing that bamboo shooting up so fast, but we're laying the groundwork. Pat is here. Good morning. Great to see you. Great to see you too. First week back to work after the holidays. High stress, fasting, and eating disaster. Big reset today. Need some motivation. Chill music is much appreciated. Very happy to have you here, as always, of course. And of course, I'm sorry to hear it was a stressful week. But this is a centering sort of space, and I will try to give you some good thoughts on heading in a new, taking action, making this next week as good as possible. Yeah, really appreciate anybody, I appreciate the honesty, having a community, having a space. It's a great place to celebrate. It's great to just be able to dive in and share the difficulties and the challenges. And because, of course, life is messy and difficult, and it isn't not like every week is going to be great. We're going to have difficulty, and we want to just be real and face that together. So taking action, maybe your taking action is just chilling and relaxing. As I was thinking this week, about taking action, I was thinking, to take action, we want to accomplish something. What do we want to accomplish? Last week, we went through the little vision session. What do you want your year to look like? What do you want December of 25 to look like as you're looking back on this year? And then what are the steps that we can take throughout the year to make that happen? And so, I was personally doing that. And this little story came to me. I was thinking of, we want 2025, and these are some language I've used in the past, like make it your healthiest year ever. And I like that. But then the more I got to thinking about it, I was like, well, can this year be our healthiest year ever? I'm kind of challenging my thoughts because I was thinking of myself, this thought that came to me. So I ran track in high school. And I was thinking of this time, I was 18. It's my senior year of high school. We were getting ready to run in like state championships. We had a state qualifying mile relay team. So I was running a 400 meters in this mile relay. And, we're, these 4 adolescent guys, and we're all psyched up about, winning and competing. And I remember having this thought there, I basically, that spring, I devoted my whole life to this track. Every day I just run. So dialed in. And I remember thinking one day after we finished this really hard practice and everybody feeling like, oh, we just crushed it. And I was just feeling like the thought that came to me, I was like, how do people ever get out of shape? Like, I don't give it. This was like the peak of like my youthful naivety. I was just sitting there. I was like, I'm never going to get out of shape. Like, I will always be in the best shape of my life. That's what I was thinking. And that was literally the top day, I think. And then, we live and learn. So I was thinking like, well, how do we, everybody gets right. We shouldn't compare ourselves to other people. That's kind of a recipe for always being discontented or always feeling badly about ourselves. So don't compare ourselves to others. But then I was thinking, should we even compare ourselves like to ourselves? Like, I mean, if I were to get out on a track now and try to race my 18-year-old self, I mean, there's no way I could do it. So when I think of like, well, how do we have our healthiest year ever? Is like, okay, we were all 18 once, right? It's like we're gifted with this health when we're young. I mean, hopefully, usually. How do we have our best health year when we're 57, when we're 75, right? It's like, it's a different sort of thing. So then I was like, well, we shouldn't even necessarily compare ourselves with different versions of ourselves. We're here now. And really, I guess what I mean by a best health year ever is like the best year that we can possibly have now. Like, we're 43, we're 64, whatever it is. This year is only going to exist for us at this time. And so when we get to December, can we say like, this was the best 60-second health year that I could have possibly had. And I feel like I've done everything that I thoughtfully could to move my health forward. So if I talk about a best health year ever, that's kind of the mindset that I'm going for, if that makes sense. But I laughed at that, thinking like that is kind of that was peak hubris, I think, for me. So taking action, I was doing some searching online this week for just like comments, thoughts on taking action. Ran into this little story I thought I'd share with you. Now, this was just on a random web page. I am not a scholar or really knowledgeable in any way about Buddhism, and so I don't know if this is a real Buddhist story or if someone made it up, but the story is a student approached the Buddha and asked him for a straight answer on some questions in his life that were challenging him and unanswered. And the Buddha replied, imagine someone is struck by a poison arrow. The doctor is brought to his side to remove the arrow and treat the wound, but the man stops him. And he says, hey, not so fast. I want to know, first I got to know who shot me and what town were they from. And what kind of wood was his bow made out of? And also, was it a crossbow or a longbow? And it's like, that person's going to die, right? Like, the doctor is here to help. You have poison in you. You need to take action. And it's like, we can be like this person in the story. And I think, what the, story is trying to get at. We have problems, in our life. This person was approaching this person for wisdom, right? And he tells this story, like, we can't know everything, right? And we can't sit here always say, oh, we're going to learn everything we possibly can about everything about a situation first before we start taking a step. It's like the patient's going to die in the meantime, right? We can be sitting here with our questions and our need to be, we have some issue that we want to fix or resolve or move toward. We can get analysis paralysis, right? Like where we're, especially, we got a YouTube, right? And I mean, I can do that. It's like, oh, I want to learn something. I'll watch this video and then this one or this one. And these things say, well, we're learning. Isn't it good to learn? But we have to take action, right? too much, too much learning, it can even be taking us away if learning becomes the only thing without action. So ultimately it's action. I was saying at the beginning, right? Gillian in our interview was saying, it even took years before I dove in on a fasting practice. So well, that's fine. But if you really want to move health forward, there has to be the practical steps taken. And so the thing I was thinking, I was like, okay, it's two things though. It's like we have to take action, but also the action that we take, it has to be, correct action. And so it's not like we can't have any learning. We have to learn something functional, something valuable that has the potential of working. If you learn one thing and say, well, I've learned one thing and I listened to this story about the arrow, if it's not something that could work, then this process, I guess, is going to break down. So there has to be a balance, right? We have to learn enough valuable, practical things, and then we also have to take action on it. This is an experience that I've had with people in my medical practice, so many times, and this is something that is being replicated in large measure right now. We've had New Year's, people diving in on New Year's resolutions. Every other commercial I saw, I watched a football game with my son yesterday. There's like an Apple Watch commercial with like getting the woman is like running and it's like motivation on the wrist, and that commercial played so many times. Everybody gearing up, getting the gym memberships, trying to get active. And I say it every time I bring it up. I'm super in favor of that. I'm a big exerciser. And so I never want to discourage anyone from being as active as you comfortably want to be. My experience, though, in running a weight clinic and a primary care clinic is that most people do not exercise in a New Year's resolution to get stronger or fitter. They start exercising to try to lose weight. And they don't really want to do it. Most of the people who really want to exercise are already doing it. And so if you're in a mindset where it's like you're pushing yourself to do something that you really don't want to do, it's just so hard to stay with that. But people do it. People do not lack for willpower. In my experience, people dive really hard into something. They'll really hit, an exercise process, and then maybe it starts working in the short term, but they can't sustain it. And, this is just the national data in clinical studies of this is, it's something less than 10%, I think, that are still in an exercise process that they start in January by the time summer rolls around. So if you're one of those 10%, of course, it's perfect. Dial in and do it. But this is how I came to fasting in my practice is people would be stuck. They'd be like, they're exercising as much as they can tolerate and they're eating the healthiest food that they can do and they're not making the progress that they want. And I was like, is there anything else? Is there anything else that can be done? And I never was instructed on fasting, in medical school, for example. And it felt like, I was like, there should be something else, people can lose weight. And then as I discovered fasting, I was like, oh, well, here is a plan, right? This is what we're saying. Take action plus a plan that can work. So fasting is, from my perspective, a plan that anyone can add in small, thoughtful amounts and dial in just the amount of it that you can tolerate or that you want to tolerate, something like that, that makes your life better. This is the mindset I want to use. I never want people to add a fasting practice into their life and say, oh, this is making things more stressful. This is like something I'm adding. Really, to me, a fasting, it's a subtraction, right? Fasting is just taking away things. And so we're taking away food for some number of meals, maybe just one, as a place to start, maybe even just a snack, Here, let me just outline what I see as like simple fasting, right? Many people in our society are told, okay, you need to have your 3 meals a day and you need to keep a snack going to keep your metabolism going. It's like envisioning like our body is like a train engine and we got to keep shoveling the coal into the system. Otherwise, the engine is going to slow down. That's the analogy that I think most people have, which is completely a bad analogy. So someone's eating 6 times a day. I say someone at 3, I call a meal anytime just someone is eating. So a snack, I'd call a meal. And so, someone's eating breakfast snack, lunch snack, dinner, bedtime snack. It's like 6 meals a day. I say, can you go 6 to 5, right? And if I had to pick out of that scenario, I'd say just knock out that bedtime snack. That's the worst time to be eating. Metabolically for the body, you're going to just directly store that stuff away. So a process of simple fasting is just opening up more space. If someone is, they're eating breakfast at 6 and then they're having a bedtime snack at 10 o'clock, there's only a space of maybe 8 hours without food. And I say, well, let's start opening that up. We knock out the bedtime snack and then we just opened up 4 hours of more space in the body where that food can be processed. We can stop running off that energy, and the body can say, okay, now that that energy is gone, what is next? Well, blood sugar is next. And as we burn through blood sugar's getting down, like we were saying, between 90 and 100. Now the body says, okay, I like that. Let's leave that alone. Like, what is next? Like, oh, well, we have this body fat. Then the body will start mobilizing the hormones to access that body fat. And the more hours that we open up that way, the stronger that effect is from the body. That's controlled hormonally. Body, as our blood sugar level's normalizing, our insulin level is dropping, counter hormones like adiponectin and growth hormone are coming out to say, let's access that body fat. So basically the process that I use when I'm working with clients or someone is to say, whatever state we're at, we're eating 6 times a day or 5, 4, maybe you're just eating 3 times. Then the core process, what I really want people to take action on, like the action step, more than anything, is to work things down from 3 meals to 2. That's when we really start cranking in some serious power. If someone's eating 3 times a day, a breakfast, lunch, dinner, I try to say, get rid of one of those meals on one end, not the middle one ideally, so that we can open up that larger food-free space. If I were to summarize maybe the last 30, 40 years of health counseling in for weight in our society, I would call it like the calorie era, right? Like people are counting everything and we're counting calories. Not that that has no value, but if I were to count one thing, like if I could only count one thing, I would count food-free hours, right? Because that's what really changes things in the body hormonally. The longer we go without food, the more drive we send to the body to make the hormones that are telling the body to access the energy in the body fat. This is what people do not see with constant eating, even if it's calorie deprived, right? So people go on very low calorie diets where they're eating little bits of food all the time. And what people don't see is, okay, yes, the calories are very low, but we're not, that total food-free hours are also very low. And so we're not creating the hormones that the body uses to access the energy out of the body fat. And that's what puts us in this very compromised metabolic state. So if I could count one thing, I would count fasting interval, right? How many hours without food? And so I like that analogy of a dial. We're slowly increasing the amount that your body can tolerate. And the body strengthens. It's like a type of strength, a metabolic strength. For many people, they start getting really good results when you go 3 to 2. And it's not everybody. And, it's interesting to think about why. But I always tell people, I never have people go beyond that, eating twice a day, until it feels easy. And I always tell people fasting is not necessarily easy. This is why I called it simple fasting and not easy fasting, because, everybody can see, okay, it is simple, but not necessarily always easy, certainly. But you can train yourself to do it. And what I tell people, although it may not be easy at the start, the goal is to find a place of ease with it, to teach yourself and gently learn to do it over the time so that it can become easy. And that's my goal for people. Although I never come out and say, like, oh, this is easy, you should just do it. My goal, I really want it to become easy for people. If every time you were to try to practice fasting, it was always as hard as the first time you did it, I think very few people would be able to stick with it, and including me, right? I mean, the first times that I tried to do it, I was like, oh man, I don't know, I don't know about this, This is why, I spent a good 6-8 months. I've told this story before. I saw a patient have healing from fasting. I met this woman who was doing all this fasting and she liked it. And I'm like, for real? Like, you can do that? And then I spent some time figuring it out myself because I was like, if I can't do this, like, there's no way I'm ever going to tell someone else to do it. But then I came to see, oh, you can adjust to it, learn to do it. And then, I don't know exactly, it was getting to be quite a while ago now. It did become much easier. And then I was like, oh, and then I just started to feel better. And then many people experience that. So if you're going through a process like that, I hope that you can experience something like this over time. And that's why I always tell people, you don't have to rush into it. You want to always keep your mindset positive. Give yourself plenty of space. We have so much pressure in our society to accomplish things quickly. We feel we put so much pressure on ourselves to accomplish things quickly. And that pressure can be very, very intense. And that's not helpful, ultimately. Finding a space where the pressure is less. I like that. Fasting as subtraction, thinking, okay, we're subtracting things. That's the sort of space where it can start to find a place of ease. So this is the process. 3 meals to 2, and then, if you need more power, 2 to 1. Doesn't have to be every day. Could be every other day, could be once a week. And then, of course, we could talk through a whole way to smooth that out. And then 1 to 0, just opening up a full fasting day. Something absolutely you can do. We have some folks like M. Palmer on here does alternate daily fasting. They have an eating day, a fasting day. Going back and forth with that. That's very aggressive practice there. That's as far as I've taken it personally with most people where I've ever counseled them to do it, where they haven't started accomplishing what they want. And I've had, as I was talking with Aquarius, I've had a good few patients who have come to me, wanting to do extended fasting, and I'm very happy to supervise someone doing it in my clinic, where I have the resources and things to do it. And but it's not something that I tell people to do. That is not simple fasting, right? That is intense fasting, very intense process. And so something I'm always open to discussing, but probably won't bring up myself too much because I never want people to think here, like, oh, this is something that you need to train up to that level. Like, I want fasting, on this channel, I want it to, why I call it simple fasting. I focus on like the very introductory end of the spectrum to try to make it the least intimidating as possible, the easiest to approach for as many people as possible. That's what I want. And then, of course, anyone who's gaining skill with it, like, you can take things far. I've done extended fasting. I've received much benefit from that. But I don't, if you look across, you search on YouTube, there's all kinds of fasting things. 10 years ago, when I was learning about this, there was not very much. It was a couple years before I saw a first video from Jason Fung, was the first guy I ever saw talking about fasting. And I told that story online in a video recently. But now, intermittent fasting is out there, right? But if we look at the big picture, it has not penetrated into society. The people who have found it, who have used it, have had great benefit. But I think we need to find ways to make these things more accessible. Aquarius says, I want to hear your thoughts on insulin resistance and what is realistic for permanent change. I have been doing 16A, 24, and OMAD all of 24, but one little cheat and my glucose spikes, up to 180, 200. Can you help me? Tell me, is it a cheat isn't just an eating. A cheat is like what are the types of things that will do it? Is that with a some sugary thing, or what might it be that you eat that does that? I wonder, now I lost my ability to see these posts. I think, well, either way. But I will say what you're experiencing is something that I have definitely seen. And it's hard to get into, I don't know your exact situation in detail, but I will speak in broad strokes. So dealing with a glucose problem, insulin resistance, fasting is a tool, right? Low carb eating is a tool, exercise is a tool, and then fasting is a tool that can approach that. There is not a one-size response to these processes for everyone. What we have to do is we have to observe what is happening in the body and then build around it. And so, here I'm hearing from you coming in, you're in a fasting interval, this morning, and the blood sugar is normalized. And so we see that situation. A year, I think I was seeing you saying a year, you're doing these sorts of practices. See it. Yeah, eat a sugary thing at the end of the meal. Have salad, egg, sardines, perfect. Then have a cookie or something. Yeah. What I can say is that I look at this process, okay, it is a process of healing. How long a healing process can take is something that, I have a video on the channel that I called Heal Your Metabolism. Maybe I should call it something else. I did that back in the fall. I told a story in that video about my foot. I talk about running a lot. I've been a runner my whole life, and I was running one day. I was playing tag with my son when he was, 4 or whatever, and we're just screwing around. We have this tiny house, so I'm up in the attic, screwing around. I was just carefree, being careless, and I twisted around in this space, and my big toe buckled under, and I stepped in it. Ended up breaking my foot so badly in 2 places. It just snapped the bone, and it was really, really bad. And long story short, I couldn't run on it, and I was doing PT, and a whole year went by, and maybe even 2, and I just always in pain from it, and I couldn't run, and so I just gave up. I said, I'll never run again. I was doing PT, and it was just years later. It was 4 or 5 years later, I thought I'll try again, and healing happened, and I ended up being able to run again, but it took so much longer than I wished. And so I use that analogy, sometimes healing takes longer than we want it to or think it should. What if, we want healing to take months? If healing is taking longer than a year, we can become very discouraged and give up on it. And people think, okay, if healing has not happened in a year, then people lose hope. They say, oh, it's never going to happen. But here, the reason I'm telling, this analogy, I don't want you to give up on it. Like I was saying at the beginning of this, think of this bamboo analogy, right? Bamboo is growing under the surface for 5 years before it shoots up and flourishes. Over this last year, you've been doing these practices, things I don't know. Have you had other things that have been positive? Have you lost weight doing that over the year? Are you feeling better? You are controlling the blood sugar, and this is like a huge step, right? The process does work. But then you say, I think the mindset as I'm kind of feeling it, right, is like, I've put in all this work. Can I just have a cookie, without blowing things, out in a bad place? Of course, in the completely healed state, right? The human body, with no disease, you should be able to eat a cookie and keep your blood sugar in a good place. But, I've been thinking about, getting some glucose monitors myself. I've never personally, worn a glucose monitor, but I've counseled so many people on it. I'm kind of curious just to watch it, myself. Someone without diabetes, eat a big sugar cookie, your blood sugar might go up to 160. 160, usually the body will, if you do not have insulin resistance, it'll cap it pretty good there. But still higher. So, okay, 160 in a normal, someone without insulin resistance, so to head up 180, 200, it's not that bad in the big picture. It's just, how often is it happening? And this is what I would say. So, like I said, I don't know your, whole situation, but if you have practices that are serving you and they're keeping your blood sugar controlled most of the time, I would never tell anyone, okay, you can never have a cookie, for example. Like cookie not, high on my priority list is a treat, right? Say what has to be true about your life, how many times can you get away with it while still moving forward? This is a way I might approach it. To say, like, you know what? I'm doing this OMAD, which is an intense thing to do. And look how long you've stuck with it and, all these things that are happening in my life. And what if this was 1 out of 5? And what if by 5 years from now, you say you could actually have a cookie and your blood sugar stayed normal? I've definitely seen things like that. That is true. You can fully heal this process, completely eliminate the insulin resistance, but it might take a lot longer than one would wish or hope. And so if that is the case, you say, what does the journey look like between now and then? I filmed that video, Joy on the Journey. Like it's not like we can only enjoy ourselves 6 years from now when we've accomplished 100% of everything. Like, no, like we need to find joy in the experience. And so I would never tell someone, oh, don't have a cookie, but just say, maybe it's weekly, that would be an idea. You're not having a dessert frequently. The blood sugar is staying in a great spot. And then, Friday is going to be my treat and I'm going to have it and just recognize the blood sugar is going to be higher that day. But if your blood sugar goes up to 200, on an occasion, like I wouldn't stress out about that. So that would be the way I'd try to find balance with it. We just have to accept, right? Say, this is where the body is at. I've done this work over a year and this has been the result. And then we work forward and say, let's do the best and learn from the body's experience. Certainly what you were describing in your other process, increasing the intensity. You want to have a more intense experience. The longer you fast, the longer you open up that space, the stronger the process of reducing the insulin resistance will be. So, if you're having this mindset where you're feeling like discouraged, like I've been doing all this process, I haven't accomplished what I want. Well, you could take it a couple different ways, you say maybe now is not the time to push things more aggressively. Does that feel stressful? Maybe some work just needs to be done to settle into this space and to accept it and try to just find balance within what you're doing. But from the other perspective, kind of get in your own headspace about it. Maybe now is the time to say, you know what, this whole year has been a training program. I've taken this step. Maybe now is the time. Here we are taking action. Maybe you say, take the next step. Dial it in the next step. And I've got some thoughts that I'll give you further about that as we go along. Transformation time now. What a great name or handle. Love it. Same here, but I'm sure I've been insulin resistant since I was a child. Lots of carbs at every meal until 5 years ago. I've heard it takes years to make gains in insulin resistance. Yeah, what I would say is that it can, I've seen people, insulin resistance is one of these things, and fasting is the type of thing. It's a process you cannot exactly predict for any one person what is going to happen. You can predict in broad strokes, generally, over time what is going to happen, but there is a lot of variation. So for some people, changes happen very quickly. And I've seen people, in 6 months, basically, and it just wipes this problem out, and people are able to start handling things without the blood sugar going up so much. And everything in life is on a bell curve, right? And there'll be outliers on each side. Some people over here, is so fast, and you're like, holy cow. And I've had people say like, how did it happen so fast? And I'm like, it's not normal. Most people is kind of in the middle, and then some people out on the other side, and then it takes a lot longer than even than I think it should. I'm like, and I always wish, I always hope for someone like, I want it to happen quickly for you, but there's no magic, it's just, it is what it is. And I say, for whatever reason, and I don't claim to have perfect knowledge of how all these things go, but I was like, you're in this scenario, and I just tell people, you're out on this side of the tail. It is taking much longer. It is a difficult situation. It's taking a lot of work to heal this situation. And so, my personal approach to someone in that scenario is just to recognize it and acknowledge it. Like, okay, I've been at this for a year, and I've had some progress, but not really as much as I want. And to try to help people not be discouraged. Because from my perspective, the worst thing to do is someone is really dialing in on a process that is moving a person forward, but then they just become discouraged and give up on it. This is why I love this bamboo analogy that I found. Just see if that is a helpful thought. It's working 5 years underground. You can't see it, but at year 4, you're further than year 3, you're further than year 2, and you're not getting the growth yet, right? You're not seeing it. And I've definitely seen this too, where people putting in the hard work, they're keep working at it, and eventually whatever it is that flips in the body, breakthrough, and then really go. So I agree with this comment. It can take years, absolutely. But don't be discouraged by that. Find joy in the process. Realize that a breakthrough, it could be around the corner. It might take a little bit, but here's something to think about. What if it really took 5 years, right? Okay, it's going to be 5 years from now, one way or the other. And you can have stuck with a sustainable process. This is why I try to dial the pressure way down for everybody. Because it may really take years to do. This is what I think about, as I'm launching simple fasting. I've kind of dove in, I'm doing a consulting practice and all this stuff. I don't hype anything, at least I try not to. This is what I find is it hard to sell. I was like, come work with Dr. Z. It might take years, but we might eventually get there. It's not like, that's not what sells in marketing, but it is the truth. At least as far as what I can offer, a natural practice that's real, that's not drugs and all this sort of stuff. Christy says, hey, nice to see you here. Hope you're doing well. Do you have a spreadsheet you can post? You spoke of one in one of your videos. Yes, I do have a spreadsheet. I can post it. I will post it later today in the comments here. If by some way I forget, you can keep on me about it. I do. I think I already have it on the website buried somewhere. I do have that. Yeah, spreadsheet can be very helpful. I've brought up here before, I ran a fascinating clinical study at the university before I left. We took insulin-using patients, 20 insulin-using patients who had been on insulin type 2 for an average of 9 years, and we put them on 18-6, 2 meals a day, 6-hour eating window for 6 months. That was the study, low carb, and it's the type of study I always wanted to do. And we tracked them on a spreadsheet, and we tracked the eating window every day so that we could, verify how much fasting did people actually do to get the effects that we see. And so this is what I will often have people track in a spreadsheet. How many fasting hours are you getting? And then in the future, I want to build out some tools. Maybe we could even build it in this spreadsheet, but then I would graph for people the fasting interval against their weight, and you can actually see it. Then you can see it on a bar line chart where you're actually seeing, okay, the more fasting hours I'm getting, you can actually see the weight going down and that correlation. And for some people, that's extremely motivating. So, yes. This brings up, Gillian and I got to this in our video that I posted, is like for many people, I've had feedback, what I love about your system is like, I don't have to count things and I can just do it, and I don't have to think about all the counting calories and these things. And then for other people, they're like, oh, it wasn't until you gave me the spreadsheet, and then I started really dialing in on the numbers and seeing it. But it's the fasting number, right? Still, it's not counting calories, right? It's counting fasting hours. And so both those mindsets can have value. And, using a data tool for a period of time, what if you did it for 3 months and got into it? It's not like you have to do it forever. Is there a test to know how much insulin is produced on a daily basis? Well, there is. Kind of. You can go, to either a lab or to your doctor. You can have your insulin level measured directly. So you can get usually this is done as a fasting insulin level, but it's a one-time blood test, and then there's cost associated with this. So seeing the total amount, that gives you a snapshot. There's another test called C-peptide. This is getting really technical, but insulin is this produced as this prohormone. The C-peptide is like cleavage peptide, is like this part that is chopped off when the insulin is activated and it's put out into the body. You can have a C-peptide level checked. This is not something that is practically done much. I rarely do that. A lot of times, you might check a C-peptide when you're trying to figure out, is someone type 1 or type 2? Like usually it's clear, but sometimes it's not. C-peptide can be a bit of a surrogate marker for total insulin, but I'll just say it isn't really clinically used that way. But a C-peptide along with a fasting insulin level could start to give you a snapshot of that. maybe in another stream, we dive in some more specifics of this. I'm getting into my mind. There is a, I was thinking if I'd take the time to look it up right now, but I'll derail us. But we can dive in. There are some values that can be kind of hodgepodge together from some of these readings that can kind of get to that. So maybe I'll table that for a different stream. You can get to this place in your mind, though, as I'm thinking about it, is like, if you are monitoring what you're eating, this would be a place where you say, I'm going to write down every day, just in macro sort of terms, like, oh, I had some, eggs and whatever for breakfast, and I had, a soup and whatever. If you're getting a broad strokes of the types of food you're eating, and you're monitoring your blood sugar against that, and you're seeing that your blood sugar is improving, which it sounds like maybe you're experiencing some of that, if you're getting some better fasting readings, then you can imply what probably is true about that is that your insulin resistance is decreasing, which means that the total amount of insulin that you're producing is almost undoubtedly less, because you're having your blood sugar better controlled for the same carbohydrate load that you're getting it, if that makes sense. So we can dive further into that in some other sessions. Yes, blood work has been really good for 4 years now, but I keep setting myself back with periodic cheats. I would just say, not to be critical in any way, but I try not to use the word cheats. Like, cheats to me is a very judgmental sort of word. It brings in a lot of guilt to people, and I try to get people to say treats instead of cheats, because like, everybody should deserve a treat now and then, and I don't want to create any sort of environment where people say, oh, I can never enjoy myself. I can never have a treat. Every time I have something, then I'm judging myself. Like, that's not necessarily a healthy mindset. And so that would just be a little thing to think about. But yeah, your thought is exactly what I'm saying. Like, even 4 years in, the blood sugar stays good, but the body just can't handle it, with a load of glucose. And but it's okay. And so this is illustrating my point. This is okay because you say the blood work's good, right? The A1C is good, and you have a treat however often, and still the blood sugar can be good in the big picture. So we don't have to have perfection in order to have something good enough. What the quote I always say is like, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, So sometimes good enough is good enough. That's what I say. Like, we don't have to be perfect. For some reason, it helps me check off each hour of not eating. Yeah, different strokes for different folks, right? Like, some people that would drive them crazy. For other people, it's like victory. And you're just getting little wins, and you're stacking up the little wins. And so I love all of it. I just say whatever serves you. And so the spreadsheet that I have is more like I put 30 lines for a month, and then I'm putting in, people checking, what is the first time that you ate and the last time, and then we track that interval throughout the day. You might, and I'm happy to chat with you about it. You could even, envision a different type of thing like that, where you can actually just be doing checks. Sometimes I'll have people, you can do it on your phone. Sometimes I have people get like a little journal, paper journal, where you can just, have a day on each page, and then you could just make yourself like, 18 check boxes or whatever on it, and every day you can just go through and be checking the boxes, and that could be nice. And sometimes that's, easier to do just analog than on the phone. what I'm seeing is my blood sugar rise, then crashes very quickly. The only conclusion I can think is my pancreas is overreacting. Well, this might be happening, but it's probably not. It's probably not the pancreas overreacting that's causing the initial spike. It's probably, I mean, do you ever get too low after that? Like that would be an overreaction. If the insulin is so high that then it crashes down too low and you're feeling unwell, that is the overreaction. The spiking too high is the insulin resistance, right? It's when the cells are resistant to the blood sugar, it's like the blood sugar's floating around in the bloodstream. It's looking for somewhere to go. In the healthy state, it would just be able to flow right into cells. There'd be no resistance, and the blood sugar normalize very quickly. And it takes very little insulin to help facilitate that. In the insulin-resistant state, the blood sugar is still there, but I think of it like the cells are full, right? The cells are full of glucose. They don't need any more. I always try to, I've said in other videos, I try to personify everything in the body. Make it easier to think about. Really, cells, I don't think, are not thinking. They do what they do, however they do it. But like the cell is trying to be nice. That's what I think of it. Cell's trying to be nice. It's like, I don't need any glucose right now. Like, I want my fellow cells to have it. So they develop the insulin resistance. They're just trying to be nice. They're trying to say, don't give me any of the sugar, give it to someone else. Except nobody needs it. And so then the whole system, everyone's like, no. And so then the sugar, it can't go anywhere, right? And so then it's just floating around. And then the pancreas is like, well, we've got to get it out. Sugar is energy, meaning it's reactive. And so inside of the cell, the body can handle sugar. But outside of the cell, in the bloodstream, it cannot handle it very well, and it reacts with things. This is actually how the A1C test is done. It's counting sugar reactions, and the more sugar is there, glycosylation reactions, these sugars are reacting with everything. And this is actually how diabetes damages the body, because the sugar's not supposed to be so high. The reaction rate is so high. Sugar is reacting with everything, and that's what damages the blood vessels. And that's why there's this drive to try to get the sugar down as quickly as possible. That's why the pancreas will ramp up the insulin, because it's like, well, we don't want all these sugar reactions happening out and damaging the blood vessels. So sugar spiking up initially, the body just could not handle that spike, and then the pancreas react to that. Treats, not cheats. Love it. Yes, it's a very thoughtful, very helpful mindset. Okay, thank you for all the questions. This is so nice. I hope this is helpful chatting through all of this. So I am going to give to you here some thoughts closing out that I wanted to tell you about taking action. Here's one I came across. Dopamine from information gathering is a dangerous drug. Your entire life will change the moment you stop looking for more information and start acting on the information you already have. Get your dopamine from action. So I really love this quote. Okay, dopamine is kind of a key thing to dial in on in our society, right? We're all surrounded by attention-grabbing things, commercials and marketing, and, YouTube, which I love, but it's also like, everything is so stimulating because it's trying to hit the dopamine. Dopamine is our natural reward pathway. Like some tasty thing we want to eat, okay, that gives us a reward, any pleasurable thing. And it's like learning is good, because the brain is trying to reinforce things that ultimately help us. And of course, learning something new that's exciting, and then it could be life-changing, could be very valuable. So we get dopamine, from learning. And then that's a beautiful thing. That's good, right? But this is what we're saying in the other at the beginning, right? If always we're just learning and never doing, then we can't move forward. Get dopamine from action. You start becoming a person of action, right? This is what, every day you say, how do I take the step and do? It's a balance. Okay, the next one I found, you are the sum total of the actions you take. You may have positive thoughts, you may have great intentions, but your actions are what matters in the end. And no matter what anyone tells you, your actions are within your control. You get to choose your action. If your next action is not one you're proud of, then that is on you. I wouldn't phrase it that way. That's a little tough at the end. I mean, I think it's true. But yeah, right? I was thinking about this a lot. I was like, is this quote always true? I think it is, because of course things happen to us, right? That are beyond our control. But then we are how we respond to it, right? So, this is an inspiring thing, right? To take action. Here's the next one. You don't plan your future. You plan your actions today, and those actions create your future. A question to reset your focus. If I repeated this day for 100 straight days, would my life be better or worse? I think that is such a powerful question. Planning your future can spiral into procrastination. Focus on your actions in the present and let the future take care of itself. So I really love this thought. The past is in the past. We can't change it, right? We can only learn from it. The future does not exist. Like it's waiting. The present is what is here. The present is what we can control. Every day that we're making toward our goal, you can only win one day at a time, right? And so we can't get overwhelmed with the future. We just have to focus on taking the action that we can in our life today. What is the step that we can take in our life today? And can that be good enough? It's all that we can do, and it's enough, right? To find peace and contentment in this day, and then also satisfaction of knowing I took the step today that was within my control. And that is what we can be content with. And then we start stringing together the days like that. It's like this says, what if you had a day like that for 100 days in a row? What could your life look like? That's the process, that I want us all to be doing. That's what I'm trying to do. And I hope that can be an inspiring thought for you. I'll leave you with this thought. I heard a quote once as I was thinking through action. I don't know, I should have looked it up, who said it, but it's do the thing and you will have the power. And I think a lot of times, with motivation, we have it flipped. We say, I have to get motivated in order to be able to do something. And my experience, many people's experience, many times it's the opposite, actually. And this is kind of the mental flip to make. Like, you actually have to do the thing in order to feel motivated. And I know that's been true for me for working out. Like, a lot of times it'll be like, I don't feel like getting up and working out. I don't even want to do it. But then you do it, and then you feel like, oh, this was good. And you're like, I need to do that, tomorrow, right? And fasting can be that same sort of thing. Healthy eating can be the same thing. I just want to eat this meal. I just want to have the treat. I just want to do these things, okay? Do the thing, right? Do the fast. Make the healthy, difficult choice. Then you do it. And then later, right, then you feel the same, just like with the workout, right? You're like, I'm really glad that I did that. I'm motivated to do that again. That's the type of cycle that we want to build. Always with balance. Like we said earlier, never that we can't have a treat or ever, but do the thing. Take the action and move yourself forward. Okay, I am going to set sail on this day. It's been really a pleasure spending this time with you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for the thoughts. I hope this was a helpful space. I hope you have a great week. If you weren't with us last week, check out the article on simplefasting.com on creating a health vision for 2025. Go through that and then work out what are the steps and take action. I hope you have a great week, and I will look forward to seeing you back next Sunday.